next week or so. So that's all for me. So now we've got Rory Braybrook. Details are right there. So he's a Microsoft Identity guy with an MVP in Enterprise Mobility. So I'll hand it over to Rory now, and he'll take you down the path.
Okay, well, thanks, Andrew,
All right.
for that introduction. So I think Andrew's pretty much covered most of it. I'm a Microsoft Identity architect and an MVP. I do a lot of stuff on Twitter with identity, LinkedIn, and my blog is called The New Control Plane on Medium. And that's because Microsoft have a saying that identity is the new control plane. Identity is more than just authentication and authorization. It's actually a control plane across pretty much the whole platform. So I'll give Andrew all the links. I'll give him the slides. So the links of all of the stuff are you'll see. So this is a really cool reference architecture slide that covers a lot of cybersecurity. You'll just see it kind of building up as we go. You see there's IoT, there's hybrid, there's compliance, firewalls, security center, policies, Windows servers, ATP, and then the identity stuff comes in over here on the right. We've got conditional access across the whole thing. That's kind of the idea of identity is the new control plane. We've got graph security, CM, all kinds of stuff there. You've got advanced threat protection, advanced information protection, cloud app security, SQL. So basically over here, this is Azure AD. So we've got identity protection, which is basically, it uses a lot of AI to see, hey, you've logged in from Adelaide and you've logged in from Russia 5 minutes later, all that kind of stuff. You've got privileged identity management, which is, how do you control the admins? This slide, if you hold it over, you'll see it's got a little hint thing. If you click on it, it'll actually take you to the docs.microsoft.com page. You've got MFA. So if there's one thing you can do to increase security, use MFA. Microsoft stats show it removes 99% of all attacks. We've got B2B and B2C, which is the stuff that we're going to be talking about in a bit more detail today. We've got Hello for Business, which is obviously Windows 10, and then privileged access management. So you can see that across this whole kind of platform, identity access kind of drives a whole lot of it. So what we're going to be talking about today, I'm not going to be talking a lot about Azure AD because I think you've had some talks on that. I am going to be talking about B2B, so business to business. I'm going to be talking about B2C, which is business to consumer or business to customer. I'll be talking about the Microsoft Identity Platform. I'll be talking about Microsoft Identity.web, and I'll be talking about the MSAL libraries. MSAL stands for Microsoft Authentication Library. So there's all these bits of the puzzle in under the Microsoft Identity Platform, and it is actually quite hard. And I get lots of questions about how do these things all fit together. Okay, so let's just try and distinguish between the three. So Azure AD is obviously the basis of M365. A lot of people don't realize that, but if you've got M365 underneath it, you've got Azure AD. Obviously, it's mainly for domain joined accounts for a company. It's got tons of access to SaaS products. I think in the marketplace at the moment, there's over 3,500 SaaS products you can use. The users are managed by that organization. So the organization onboards, offboards, and whatever. And for example, if we use Woolworths as an example, in Azure AD, typically you'd have Woolworths employees. So B2B is more guest users. These are perhaps domain joined, but they come from another Microsoft tenant. They could also be a Microsoft account or social, for example, Facebook or Twitter. You can also come across as a guest account with SAML or WSFed Federation. You do have access to SaaS and you get conditional access across your guest accounts, but the users are managed externally. So if you're coming across from another tenant, that user is managed in that other tenant. It's not managed in this tenant where you're a guest user. And an example would be other customers that do business with Woolworths. So B2C is basically just a whole lot of people with random email addresses. They're not domain joined. They are just random people out there. You can have social accounts, so the Twitters and the Facebooks. You can also have federation in and out via SAML or OpenID Connect. You don't actually get access to SaaS in B2C, which makes sense. Why would Woolworths give access to Office 365 to all their customers? It's designed to be self-managed, so they don't give your help desk a hard time. So users self-register, they do their own password resets, they update their profiles, all that good stuff. It's built to scale to hundreds of millions of users. The poster child for B2C is Real Madrid, the football club. They use B2C to manage their fan base. And the last time I looked, they had about 400 million users. So it scales really well. And an example, obviously, would be Woolworths customers. So this is the portal that Woolworths customers would use to do online ordering or whatever. So that's basically a quick summary of the differences between the three types of directories that you have in Azure. Okay, so we'll talk about B2B now. So B2B, as we said, is for companies, people in other companies that you want to access your tenant. So there's an invite guest user. I'm just going to show you some screenshots for this because to show you an email address in another tenant, I'd need another Microsoft 365 license. So this is all the different kinds of guest users that you can have. So you can have users from another Azure directory, federation, Google. If you come in with a Google account, it actually has federation behind the scenes. You can have a personal Microsoft account. There is a flow where it sends a one-time password to the user to let the user come in for 24 hours. And then there is basically the personal one. You come in, you sign in, you get the OAuth consent, and then you redirect to the resource. So there's quite a lot of different ways that you can be a guest user. Okay, so if you go to the portal under the users, you click new guest user, you come and say, I want to invite a user. It says invite a user to collaborate. The user will be emailed an invitation. They can accept in order to begin collaborating. You fill in a whole lot of details, the name, the email address. You can give the person some kind of message just to kind of tell them what it's all about. You click invite. The person then gets the email. It basically says, hey, you're invited to access this. This is where it's from. This is the message that we had. They then click the invitation. It then gives you the OAuth consent screen like you see all the time. So they say, yeah, cool, I'm all happy with that. And they click accept. And then they get added. And you can see in this case, it's a Microsoft account. So this is the Microsoft account. This is my tenant. And it puts this bridge in the middle. So this is almost like a placeholder which manages the Microsoft account against the tenant. And you can see the user type over here is guest. So that's a traditional way that you have had guest users in the past. However, there is a new way of doing it, which is in preview called external identity. And you'll see it says B2X, which is quite interesting. And I'll explain that a little bit later. So let us go over here and basically, sorry, let me go to this one. So over here under Active Directory, over here under user settings, you'll see down here external users, manage collaboration settings, and this is the one that you have to set over here. Enable guest self-servant password by user flow. So I've set that to yes. So that enables this feature. So now what happens if I go and I actually look just hang on. Active Directory, external identities. All right, so basically I've already created one. So let's go and have a look. So it's going to search for one. You can see it's called B2X. I click on that. All right, so I can link it up with identity providers. So I've just used Azure AD because it's easy. But I could also link it up with some of the social ones. It allows me to select user attributes. So these are the user attributes I'm going to ask the user to fill in when they come along and they try and log in. You can do some page layout, so you can do stuff about laying out the page and, you know, branding and so on and so forth. You can have a whole lot of different languages if you want to, and then you link up the applications. So essentially what this is saying is that users who access one of these applications will get the external identity sign-on. Okay, and that's all you have to do in this side. And then obviously in app registrations, you've created one of these. So if I just give you a demo of this one. So if I just run this application. There's hope that it is going to work. Yep. All right, and I'm going to say use another account. You see here, it says no account, create one. So I'm going to create an account, and to avoid me having to type these long things, I'm going to use this one. So that is the email that I want added. All right, you enter the password because this is a user in another tenant. Okay. Forget about one password. So now what you're seeing, right, is it's asking me to add the fields that we selected in the configuration. What's interesting is that the given name and the demos were already in the other tenant, so it populates the ones that it can populate and asks you to do the rest. So I'll just say my city's Auckland, I'm in New Zealand, and my postal code is 1010, whatever. I continue. All right. I now get the normal consent screen that you get all the time saying, hey, are you happy to let you user group demo get your profile and access? And you say accept. And then you're into user group demo, and you can see the JSON web token claims there, all sweet. So that is a way for the user to self-register without getting an email. So it's a slightly different flow, but you know, I've got quite a lot of customers that are basically switching to this because it lets the users come in on their own. Okay, so all right, so let's go and look at Azure AD B2C. So I have no idea. In general, have you done a lot of B2C work, or is it something that you probably don't have any experience with at all? No.
Personally, I've only done B2B, not B2C.
Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of what I assume, because most people don't play around with B2C. All right, so first of all, B2C has another tenant. Okay, so this is a B2C tenant. You have to go and make a new tenant. A B2C tenant looks completely different. You can see it's got stuff about user flows and identity experience framework and all that kind of stuff. And it's based on Azure AD, and it's a little bit confusing because they've kind of used some of the Azure AD screens, but you can't always do the stuff in the way you're used to in Azure AD. So it's a little bit confusing. But anyway, so we want to do a user flow. So a user flow is the identity part of an application. So just like we had that application user group demo, if you can imagine, when you went to user group demo, you go to the user flow. So the user would then see a whole lot of B2C screens where you can self-register and do all kinds of things. So if I click user flows, right, and I can go and do a new user flow. So there's a number of different flows. You can sign up and you can sign in. So basically you sign up and then it signs you in automatically. I can go and edit my profile. I can do a password reset. I can do a sign up only and not a sign in. I've personally never used that, but you know, you can do it if you want. There's a sign in and not a sign up. This one's quite popular because a lot of my customers actually populate the users into B2C using the Graph API. So they've got a backend, typically CRM Dynamics, where the users are managed, and then it calls the Graph API to create the user, and then the user can sign in through a workflow. You can also do resource owner password credentials. So this is one of the OAuth flows. In OAuth 2.1, it's actually going to be deprecated. In this user flow, you actually put the username and the password into the request. So it's generally not considered very secure. And you shouldn't be using it unless you've got a very good reason. So, right, let's go and do a sign up and sign in. So I'm going to do recommended one. All right. And now, all right, I'm going to give this a name, user group 30, whatever. All right. This one again, I can go and select other identity providers. I'm just going to say you need an email to sign up. I don't want MFA. B2C now has conditional access. I'm not going to worry about that. And now again, you see, I want given names, surname, city, and region. All right. And then I want these returned in my JSON Web Token. So these are things I have to sign up. And so you can see this looks very, very similar, right, to what we saw with external identities. So this is why they call external identities B2X, because it's a blend of B2B and B2C. And it does raise some questions as to where B2C is going to fit in the future. Is it going to become part of Azure, or maybe not, or I don't know. There's a lot of questions in the forums about this, but this is why they call external identities B2X, because it's this kind of blend of the two. So if I go to user group 30, that's the one we've just created. All right, and you can see here, there's a way that we can do some testing. So we're going to do a run user flow. And okay, so imagine this is what the user would see if they came from user group demo. So otherwise I have to hook it up to an application. So again, this is a B2C login screen. You can log in with B2C, or you can say, hey, I don't have an account. All right, so I'm going to put in my Gmail account. I'm going to say send verification code. I'm going to flip over to here. Hopefully I will get a email very shortly. Come on, come on, come on. There we go. So it's 464062. Okay. Just hang on. So it's 464062. So that's going to verify my address. Okay, I put in a password. Right. Again, it's now put up the forms or the text boxes for what I wanted. I'd say I live in Bahrain. It's Joe, and it's blogs. Okay. So now I'm registering. So this is B2C. It's me self-registering. Obviously, if you were a Woolworths customer, maybe it would ask you for your Woolworths customer number, all that kind of stuff. So it's really up to you to get whatever you want from the user. So I say go and create the user. All right, and then basically this is the JSON Web Token that it returns. And down here you can see, remember I said I want the stuff returned in the Web Token? There it is. So now you can use this information in your application to do whatever you want to do with it. So that is a typical B2C flow, right? Now, that B2C flow is done over here, which is a user flow. So you can see when I ran this, it's very much a wizard. So it's point and click. So you can do relatively complex stuff. But when you start getting into more complicated stuff, you need to look at this one, the Identity Experience Framework. And the Identity Experience Framework uses custom policies. So custom policies are basically XML as code. So you have a whole lot of XML stuff that, and I'll show you now what it looks like. And you basically write essentially user journeys. You can call REST APIs. You can join screens together. You can have a workflow. You can have different branding. Basically, you can do whatever you want almost. It's pretty much unlimited. So when you look at, you go off to a GitHub directory, and they have a whole lot of starter packs. So they have a starter pack for local accounts. So that's just logging straight into B2C. There's a starter pack for social. So I'm only going to allow the Twitters and the Facebooks and the Googles or whatever. And then you can have social and local, and then you can have social and local with MFA. So I'm just going to look at the social accounts. And if I go across here, if I went into the B2C screen and I was using custom policies and I clicked reset your password, it would come here. You can see there's a whole lot of stuff that we don't worry about. And you have user journeys. This is the password reset user journey. And these are the claims that you want this flow to return in the JSON Web Token. And you can put lots of other claims here. All right, so this is basically, I guess, there's a one of these for password reset, there's one of these for sign up, there's one of them for sign in, and so on. And they all basically call a user journey. And now if you go and look at the real XML, over here, you'll see this is a user journey called password reset. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a local account discovery using email address. So we are going to go and find the B2C account from the email address that the guys used to reset the password. And that's going to return an object ID. And then we are going to show a screen with new password twice. So type your password, type it again. And we're going to write the password using the object ID that we found from the email address. And then we're going to create a JSON Web Token, and we're going to return it. All right, now go and look at this. And this is as far as I'm going to go, because it starts to get really complicated. If I can find, there you are. So this is actually the technical profile, and it has a whole lot of metadata. I'm not going to go into this stuff. There's output claims. These are the output claims that we want to come out of with. And then we've got technical profiles, which is user read using email address. And you've got, this is a technical profile. This calls a validation technical profile. It is quite complicated, but it is very powerful. And so that is where I'm going to kind of stop. I can talk for hours on this if you would like, but it's probably outside of what you really want. So that's basically B2C as to the level that I want to go to. Okay, so that's the B2C demo. All right, so let's look at the Microsoft Identity Platform. And I can't actually see the questions. Are there any questions so far?
No, I don't see any.
Nothing. Okay, cool. Just shout out if you see it, because I can't actually see it when I've got the PowerPoint open. Okay, so the Microsoft Identity Platform. So first of all, it's a platform, right? It's not a product. So you can't download it. You can't install it. In the past, we had lots and lots and lots of GitHub libraries, and they were all over the place. Some were updated, some weren't. There were some for Java if you want to do a web app, but there wasn't something for Java if you wanted to do, maybe some SPA kind of thing. It was a real nightmare to try and find out what libraries we used where and which ones you should use. And so Microsoft took all that feedback on board, and they basically built a wrapper around all these GitHub repositories, and they called it the Identity Platform. So back in the day, we have the version 1, which is ADL, the Azure AD Authentication Library. And this used ADFS, which I do quite a lot of stuff with. So it would talk to ADFS, and it would also talk to work and school accounts. And that was all it would talk to. Now, ADL is pretty much been deprecated, and it's been replaced with MSAL. And there is, if you have got any ADL libraries, there's some very good docs.microsoft documentation on how you migrate from one to the other. So in the Microsoft Identity Platform, and if you're using ADFS 2019, you can talk to ADFS, you can talk to work and school accounts, you can use Microsoft accounts, you can use your social or your local accounts, and you've obviously got Azure AD B2C. So this is basically a wrapper around all these different scenarios. All right, and when we go and look at the kind of flows, we can do stuff with single page apps, we can do web apps, we can do web API, we can do background processes like a daemon, which is server to server, we can do mobile, and we can desktop console. And then each of them has a very specific flow. Like a web app, you've got some registration, you want to validate the token, you have to look at secrets and certificates. Maybe if you're calling an API, you need to think about the scopes that you're going to allow. You're going to have authorization in the web app, and you also need to think about storing the token cache. Now, MSAL does all of this stuff for you. So you don't have to worry about how you're going to store the token. In OAuth, when your token expires, there's a refresh token flow, which MSAL does for you. So the whole idea is the library just drives it. You don't have to go and read 15 books on how OAuth works or how OpenID Connect works. You just let the library drive it. Okay, so if we go back to back to Azure AD, so not B2C, because remember I said the tenants are different. So we go over here and we do app registrations and we do a new registration. So I'm going to make this user group 26, I think. I'm doing a lot of these. All right, so first we decide, do we want to allow people only to come into our tenant? So this is a single tenant. Do we want any Azure tenant to be allowed to access this app? So that's multi-tenant. Could it be multi-tenant and personal, or is it just personal? So you get a number of choices here. So we're just going to go with single tenant. Now, OAuth has this concept of a redirect URI, which confuses everybody. Now, if you know what you're doing, you can configure it here, or you can just let the platform do it for you. So you go and register. Okay, and it'll come up with all this boring stuff, client IDs and tenant IDs and all kinds of things. If you want to call APIs, there's a whole lot of stuff here. And then over here, this is the platform. So the sign up user in 5 minutes. So view all quick start guides. Okay, so we can say, would it be a web application? So if you want to do a web application, it could be ASP.NET, it could be Node, Python, Java, ASP.core, PHP, or Ruby. Every one of these has got a flow behind it. Maybe I want to do mobile, so it could be Windows, Android, iOS, Universal Windows Platform. I don't know if anyone ever uses this anymore. React or Xamarin. I could go and do an SPA, single page. So I could JavaScript with an auth code flow, which is one of the OAuth flows. Another JavaScript with implicit, which is being deprecated in OAuth 2.1. Angular or React. Or I could go and do a daemon, and I could do Python or .NET Core Console, right? So every one of these different scenarios and languages has a flow that you can follow. So let's just say, hey, I just want to do a web application and I want to do .NET. All right. So the first one it says is, okay, I have a GitHub sample for you. And in this GitHub sample, that is configured. So please go and change my configuration for the GitHub sample. And you say, go and do that. And you say, this flow needs implicit grant and it uses ID tokens, and you click make updates. So now it's going back into this app registration and making the change for you. So you don't have to worry about what is this redirect URI. And then you download the code sample. So you go off to GitHub, and then it goes through a whole lot of documentation for you. So how you're going to do it, I've done it already, so I'll show you that, how the sample works. So you're getting redirects, prompt credentials, you're getting an access token, the redirect URL, and so on and so forth. And then it tells you these are the OWIN NuGet packages that it uses. All the stuff is there for you. This is what the startup class looks like. So you use cookie, use OpenID Connect. There's my client ID, there's my redirect URI, etc., etc., etc. These are the things you need to know about and configure. And so for every one of those scenarios that you've just seen, there is a README to guide you. You don't have to read any of this. This is just, if you're really interested, you can go further. Basically, you can stop here. Okay, so I've done that, and I've downloaded the sample, which is this one, I think. Let me just stop it. All right, so you can see how long that took me, right? It really didn't take me very long at all. So I've downloaded the sample. It's all pre-configured for me. It brings up a screen. I was already logged in with user group demo, so it's logged me in. And again, this is my JSON web token. So that didn't even take me 5 minutes. So the idea of this platform is that you can do what I've just done, and you end up with a fully built project in ASP.NET. And you can now use this. So this has got built-in authentication, built-in authorization. You can use this now, and you can put your business rules on top of it. So this is becoming almost like a scaffolding. Build your business rules on top of it, because that's what you do. That's what your company's got their value in. And let Microsoft take care of all the stuff in the authentications, the flows, the tokens, the redirect flows, and all that good stuff. And as I say, if you look in the web.config, all that stuff is pre-configured. You don't have to worry about any of it. So that's been really successful. And that you basically say, what's my scenario? What's my language? And you're getting a boilerplate template. And it just works. And then you can build up from it. And then again, you saw on that page, there was APIs. So if you now want to use the sample to call an API, using the Microsoft Graph, or using an API that you've built, or an API that you've got in Azure AD under API management, you can build all that stuff, and there's samples to help you. Cool. So that is that one. All right, and we've done the identity platform demo. So now we get to identity.web. So although the platform was very successful, as you saw, that code, I showed you a little bit of it, is actually quite complicated if you really have to get into it and try and mess around with it. So Microsoft took that feedback on board, and they created another library called Microsoft Identity Web. And this only works for .NET Core, and it works for .NET Core 5. So the stuff that I've showed you in the platform, if you do .NET Core, that's .NET Core 3.1. So this is a slightly different way of producing a project, which is like the boilerplate template for you to build your business rules on top, but making it even simpler, where the authentication is pretty much one line. So what is Microsoft Identity Web? It's a library which contains classes used in conjunction with ASP.NET on top of the platform, as I said, and Azure AD B2C. This is being built up as we speak. At the moment, it's really web applications and protected web APIs. Now there is a subway, which is quite a nice name for it. And this is the subway here. So down the bottom, you'll see the green is Azure AD. The light blue is national clouds, for example, the United States government, or the Azure that's in China. And the dark blue is B2C. And you've got, this is the sign-in section. You've got calling web APIs, and you've got authorization. These are the stations, what they call. So if I click sign-in users in my org, so if I click that, it takes me to a GitHub sample, which basically says this is ASP.NET, it's signing in your organization. So it's the same sort of model as the identity platform. And again, you've got the instructions, so you can go and do that. And the link to this subway is in the slides that I'm going to send. If you click on the railway between them, for example, this one, so we're going from in my org to in any org. If you click there, what that does is basically says, change it to sign in from any org. Okay, so basically it has these steps: sign in users, my org, any org, to work with school or social, call Microsoft. So you can start anywhere, and when you want to get to the next step, you just click on the railway line, and that will then take you to the next step in the flow. It also has a whole lot of stuff to do with the token caching. So MSAL, you don't really get to decide where the tokens are cached. It's supposed to be hidden from you. In this one, it gives you much more control. You can control the in-memory, you can control the session, and you can actually go and put stuff in SQL if for some reason you want to do stuff with it or whatever. All right, So that's that. All right. And so, of course, because it's .NET Core, everything runs from the command line. So we want to say, I want a new MVC framework. I want to use .NET 4.5. This is going to be single org, just for me. This is the tenant I'm going to use, and this is the client ID. Obviously, you need to go in the app registration before. So this doesn't directly update the application like the platform does. And this is where I want to call back the path. I'm going to create it, I'm going to build it, and then I'm going to run it. So 3 commands. All right, so if I go over here, and the first thing I want to show you is, okay, that sorry. I was going to show you the directory was empty, but obviously it's not empty because I'm running the command. So it was empty before I ran this. This is the command you've just looked at. Now, if you can see, there's a whole project in this directory, which is the same project as the cutting set up for you. I'm going to build it. So it's building in .NET Core. And it's pretty quick. So it's a preview version of .NET 5. .NET 5 release candidate 1 has just come out. And then I want to say .NET Run, and I want to use the .NET 5 framework. So it uses the Kestrel web server, and it basically builds up a web server and then deploys it. So now if I go to that URL, for example, and I go over here, and then I'm logged in with another one of my accounts, and I've now got a base .NET Core 5.0 application. And I can then go into that project with .NET Core. You can use Visual Studio, you can use .NET Code, you can use whatever you want, and you then build the authentication on top of that. So that's, again, how long did they take me to run those 3 instructions? What, 2-3 minutes. You've now got a working project. Again, there's a whole lot of different .NET New, there's stuff for SPA, there's stuff for all the ones that I showed you. It has the equivalents. So again, very quick way to get up and running and not really have to worry about all the boilerplating and the tokens and all that kind of stuff. All right. So we've done the demo. Those are the references for all the slides and the subways and everything. And that's pretty much it. So are there any questions?
Feel free to unmute yourselves.
Nothing in the chat.
No, I don't see anything in the chat. No one's got any questions, not even one.
I can ask you one. What's a good scenario for B2C? Where do you often see it used? Like to deliver what sort of solution?
Okay, so if you look at the licensing for Microsoft, if you can't use, some guy at hotmail.com kind of thing, you can't put them into Azure except as a guest account. And a guest account, you only get 5 guest accounts for every Azure AD license. So if you've got 100,000 customers, that is potentially going to be horrendously expensive. So it is a scenario for the users, for, like I said, Woolworth customers who want to use an online portal, and you want to use Microsoft, their all the goodness that they've got, but you want to have hundreds of thousands of users, and it costs like 0.0005 of a cent for each customer that you add or something. The pricing is really low. And the other reason is that you don't want these people to phone your help desk. If you've got 100,000 people phoning your help desk, you're going to have a problem. So it's self-registration, it's password reset on their own, they can update their profiles, they can basically drive everything themselves. And it's just a way of getting them into your portal without you spending a ridiculous amount of money on licensing.
And could you still give them access to like an internal app through Azure AD proxy or something?
No.
So still limitations then.
Yeah, so B2C isn't designed to give isn't designed to give access to your internal applications, because I think security wise, like if you were Woolworths, you know, if you want to use things like if you're an insurance company, for example, it's one customer that I'm helping at the moment. You've got the customers of that insurance company, but you've also got the guys who sell the insurance. So the way that we do that is you basically federate Azure AD B2C with Azure AD. So the advisors who sell the insurance come to the portal because maybe they want to have a look at what business they've done for the last month or whatever, but they log in with Azure AD. So there's a federation between them. And then that gives them access to the customer portal, but then that logon also gives them access to the internal Azure AD applications, because you're logging in with an Azure AD account, not with a B2C account. And obviously, if some customer clicks advisors, they don't have an account in Azure AD, so they don't get in. So it basically says, you want to buy stuff from us, you just log in and in B2C, and we'll give you access. But B2C does have conditional access, so you can do stuff about groups and mobiles, and you can say like with Intune kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a much more simplistic one, because it's really just for customers, and it's really just for them to come into an external portal kind of thing.
Cool. Any questions from anyone else?
All right. Well,
good. Yeah.
Thank you for asking me to present, you guys, and yeah, good luck and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Yes, thank you very much for taking the time out to present to us. We'll put this up on YouTube in the next day or two. And yeah, well, at the start, I think we had a few ways to contact Rory, or just message through Meetup, and we can get through to him for you if anyone needs to ask any follow-up questions. Please
ping me if you've got any questions. I do a lot of helping people. I'm very active on Stack Overflow, etc., etc. So I write a lot of blogs as well. So yeah, please just reach out to me if you've got any questions.
That's great. Thank you very much, Rory, for presenting.
All right, Dan. Bye.
Okay, thank you everyone for attending. We'll see you all next month. Thank you.